shape. We had diamonds taking shape.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Did everyone enjoy their lunch? Shh. Perfect. Everyone enjoy their lunch? Or are you still chewing? Yeah? Give me a table smack if you enjoyed your lunch. Awesome. Feels like I'm in Parliament. Okay, we're going to start the afternoon. Selfie. Okay, perfect. All the glasses. By the way, there's going to be a contest I forgot to mention at the end of the day on how many times I've changed my sunglasses. And I got a cool, what do I got in my pocket here? Just see if my, because I didn't spend my allowance yesterday. So today, I got 20 bucks, a crisp 20 that'll pay for the free parking. If you can figure out how many times I've changed my, but we'll talk about that after. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. The rest of the afternoon is going to continue to be awesome. We got a couple great speakers. Our first speaker is John Dickey, and he's an awesome speaker. I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. John is the senior partner in Dickey and Lehman, an Ottawa law firm. John practices landlord and tenant law for residential landlords and government relations, mostly for two landlord associations. John has specialized in the field of landlord and tenant law for 35 years. Some of my friends actually work with you. We'll talk later. Since helping to found it 30 years ago, John has led the Eastern Ontario Landlord Organization here in Ottawa. John has achieved numerous major advocacy successes for Ottawa landlords, as well as various advocacy successes for the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations. Now, something funny about John, and this is what I love about lawyers, is when you send out an email to everyone to do something for you, lawyers and accountants are usually the ones that actually do it. So I asked everybody to give me something funny. And you know, otherwise I got to come up and make it up myself. So he says, when you hear John speak, you'll think that John has always been a heavy smoker, but he's actually never smoked. Have you ever vaped? No? Marijuana? CBD, DBD, THC, HMI? No? All right, so we're good. So put your hands together for John.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and you get the heavy smoking joke if you didn't get it before. Very good. All right, so we don't have much time. Let's get going straight away. The first thing I would like to point out is my involvement with EOLO has been in part to help organize it, but also to represent it, to act in government relations for EOLO, dealing with the City of Ottawa and to a lesser extent with the province of Ontario. And that has been EOLO's focus, has been how do we get the best rules, the best programs, the best charges from the city. By best, in this context of charges to landlords, I mean the lowest charges from the city. And we certainly have been successful at doing that. And we had a recent major success, which I'll get to momentarily. As AJ said, I'm also a lawyer. And as lawyers go, I'm not bad at business promotion, because I do want to point out that from Emon Montgomery, the publishers, you can buy the book on residential tenancies law and practice that I and my law partner have written. So it uses layman's language and focuses on what landlords, including small landlords, need to know. So what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about the new rules that are coming out soon for long-term rentals. I'll tell you what the city has proposed, how I think each proposal will affect landlords, and I note that you can give input to the city by Thursday, 13 days, 12 days from now, but by all means go home and do it this afternoon or do it tomorrow. So by way of background, many of you will know this, but 2 years ago, the city started to consider rental regulation, including the possibility of licensing landlords at a cost. And 4 other cities in Ontario have licensed landlords, and the cost ranges from about $200 a unit a year up to $400 or even $500 per unit per year. So this has been a major blow to every landlord in the city. But thanks to the work that I did, the work that EOLO and Oreo members did, that did not take place. That licensing landlords was rejected. So that's the good news. There will be some bad news, but trust me, unlike the usual good news, bad news joke, the bad news doesn't swamp the good news. So remember when I'm talking, though, that these rules that I'm saying the city is proposing, the city could have required more. They haven't yet required these, and they could have been charging us all money to implement those rules. So that's the good news. Okay, there's my good news, bad news joke. And I'll be talking about 2 different areas, pest control and rental management. So on pest control, the city is proposing to require all landlords to follow an integrated pest management approach. That's known as IPM. And IPM has 3 key aspects. 1, keeping pests out. 2, creating an adverse environment for pests. And 3, eradicating pests if there are enough of them to be a problem. So the difference is, the key difference from what many people do now is under IPM, you have to be proactive, not just reactive. It is not sufficient just to wait and for a tenant to call you about pests and then send in an exterminator. Under IPM, you should have an inspection schedule for your property, for your units. You should be checking that tenants are keeping the property in a state which is adverse to pests. And then you will need, under this system, to have a plan to address so you need a plan for these proactive inspections, to have certain information for tenants. And again, Oreo and I and EOLO can give out templates. You need to have standing treatment plans for ants, roaches, and bed bugs. And again, we can give you a template for these. And there's a requirement to check 15 to 30 days after a pest control treatment. Now, that can easily be the pest control operator going back to see if he or she needs to treat again. So it's a pretty common thing, and it should be fine. So that's the good news. Now, the bad news is that the city proposes that when an infestation occurs, landlords will collaborate with tenants to develop an agreed infestation treatment plan. But my concern is that will delay treatments, take extra of your time or your property manager's time, and potentially enable tenants to limit unit preparation and potentially embolden tenants to try to refuse pesticide treatments. Instead, we need to be able to give tenants instructions just as we do now. Give them clear instructions and have them do it. There's also a proposal for re-inspection 5 to 6 months after any pest control treatment, which to me just seems like a waste of time. All right, so more good news. There will be requirements on tenants to do what they need to do. Although here again, continuing with the good news, bad news format, as it stands, the proposal lists 6 offenses that landlords could commit and only 1 offense that a tenant would commit, namely not adhering to the agreed treatment plan. Well, one, we need to get it, the landlord's instructions, not this agreed treatment plan, and 2, we need it to be an offense for the tenant not to keep their unit in such a state as to be adverse to pass. The whole point of it is, if someone's kitchen is filthy, well, the cockroaches have a field day. If someone's unit is cluttered, then it's hard to treat for pests. These are all things that tenants need to do, and we heard noises from the city that they were going to get tenants to do these things, so we just want to make that happen. And we want an effective treatment program. All right, on the rental management side, the new system will require landlords to give tenants unit-specific instructions in writing covering these things that are on the screen. Many of these things are scattered through your leases. Many of you tell tenants this orally or even give them instructions in writing, but the city wants it to be all in one 2- or 3-page package that the tenant would sign off on. And then if you say to the city, listen, the tenant screwed up about the parking, the city can say to you, well, show me the instructions. Show us that you told them where to park. Show us in writing, that you told them in writing and the tenant signed, and then we'll go after the tenant. So this will be some work, but it brings with it that benefit that the city can actually go after tenants. There's one more thing which could be an issue. This only affects how many people have a building of more than 10 units or 3 stories or more. More than 10 units? Not very many. 3 stories or more? Okay, well, not that many of you, but the plan is that for people with bigger buildings, the city will require the landlord to maintain a capital maintenance plan. But as it currently stands, it will be quite rudimentary, quite tame. It will be a list of building elements, and there are the building elements. It will be, in the next column, the year when those elements were last replaced or refurbished, and for many years that could be don't know. And the third column is when the landlord plans, I'm going to try to make that expects, to replace or refurbish it. And because the point is, we don't replace these things on a schedule. We replace something when it needs to be replaced. We refurbish it when it needs to be refurbished. And that's how we keep costs down, and that's how we keep rents down. So this is something EOLO certainly will be hammering away at the city to try to make that manageable. All right, so to send comments to the city, you send them to that email address that's on the screen, bylawreviews@ottawa.ca. You need to do that by not Thursday coming, but Thursday a week from now. You need to include your name, phone number, and email address. And at this point, you do not need to register with the lobbyist registry because the city has asked for input. So for questions, please, hold on. See me at the break. I'll be here at the break, or email me. And I don't hide. You can Google John Dickey, lawyer, Ottawa. I'll pop right up. If you Google John Dickey and housing, you'll get me and 5 Scotsmen running around Scotland doing social housing. But I can't help that.
Just got a little something for you. I know that we're going to be seeing you at the panel after, but on behalf of Tony Miller and Sue Hamid, there's a little gift for you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and then I have also a gift for you. It's a water test. One of our people in here, someone went to Quickie and got a bottle of water, filled it up, and apparently the water's not good. So I need you to take care of that at the tribunal, the board, and wherever else. Okay. So I appreciate it.
I thought you were giving me a bottle of water to help me with my throat.
No. We've taken care of that. We're good.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. So next I'm going to call up Genevieve, I always want to say Genevieve, but Genevieve Walton. She's amazing. I've met her last year and have worked with her over the last and seen her at different events, and she's doing amazing things. She's the owner of Short and Sweet B&B. Short and Sweet B&B is Ottawa's largest Airbnb property management company. She has a commerce degree from the Sprott School of Business. Genevieve is also involved in many charities, including 5 Days for the Homeless fundraising campaign, and works tirelessly for her clients and the community. This extraordinary business person has accomplished in a few short years what many work a lifetime to achieve. Please welcome Genevieve Walton.
Hello, thank you for having me. So my name's Genevieve. I'm the owner of Short and Sweet B&B, which is Ottawa's largest Airbnb property management company. I am the one you see in the paper. Genevieve, that is me. I do exist. So we manage about 150 Airbnbs, mostly in the downtown Ottawa area. We're really proud of what we can provide to our clients, and as we go through today, I'll get to talk to you about essentially what is happening with regulation. So you've probably heard the buzz. What exactly do you believe is happening with regulation right now? Quick show of hands. Yeah? What's happening? Does anyone know? Yes?
They're limiting short-term rentals.
Absolutely. So probably what you've seen right now is what the media has perceived is that short-term rentals are no longer available in Ottawa. And as I go through the presentation, you'll start to see how the media has very skewed what's happening in the short-term rental market. And a lot of that comes from lack of education within the community. And that's why really there's advocates like myself and other people around Canada who advocate for the short-term rental community to talk about proactive and responsible hosting. So this is what we provide for our clients. Is essentially a full-service property management company, cleanings, check-ins, checkouts, all that good stuff. And it focuses on that short-term side. This was our progression. Honestly, we're super excited about this. But what the main thing I want you to focus about right now is that short-term rentals are not anything new. In fact, they've been happening for years, probably I'd say 20, 25 years. If you look at the Quebec side, they've had them in cottages, for example. What really happened was a powerhouse called Airbnb came out, added a bunch of money behind, essentially a tech company, and started a short-term rental phenomena, in my opinion. So I would say the sharing economy is something that is very new. It's very unknown, and I think it causes a lot of confusion, and it causes people to perceive a lot of risk within something that's actually very stable, in my own opinion of that. So this here, when you look at Uber, you look at Airbnb, you look at other platforms, essentially, like I said, Airbnb just put a ton of money behind a tech company, and it's a glorified CRM system. There's nothing really new about it. It's best to think of Airbnb as a CRM system. And the reason why I say this is one way that we've actually capitalized the market by taking on long-term leases, let's say international students, and putting them for 4 months on Airbnb, mostly because they couldn't provide a credit check here. So that's the way to look at it, is that it's a glorified CRM system for us. So what is happening in the Ottawa community right now? We are proactive, responsible hosts. This essentially means that you do well for your neighbor, you do well for the community, and you also do well for your clients and your guests. It means that you take care of anyone. It means that you also don't let just anyone in. You take out your garbage, you try and follow the bylaws as best as possible. The current bylaws that are coming into play are actually the bylaws that are already in play. And that's what I think people don't really realize. There's occupancy taxes that might be raised from 4% to 4.25%, but otherwise I would say the majority of the time, the bylaws that are coming into play in the next year or so are actually ones that are already happening right now. And that makes it very confusing for people of what exactly is a short-term rental, because it is operating in the gray right now. So when I'm going to talk to you right now about regulation, what I'm actually talking to you about is implementation. Right now, we have regulations and bylaws in play. People don't follow them. The reason that I would say the short-term rental market became had an extensive amount of growth was simply because of issues with the landlord-tenant board. I think you'll hear a lot of other conversations today about that, and that is why I personally believe the short-term rental market became so popular. We like to say that it's prompt recourse, prompt payment. That's what happens with the Airbnb side. I get payment right at the very beginning of that transaction, and if I don't really want you to stay there because you're breaking the house rules, I can kick you out pretty quickly. That's kind of the best part about Airbnb, unfortunately. And that's why I would say until the landlord-tenant board is actually solved or they come up with new regimes within it, I believe my Airbnb business will continue to thrive until that's solved. So current regulation process. There was a lot of chat, and you saw it in the media. There was a lot of stuff happening. One of my favorite ones, I think that's the next slide. This is me. I have 76 homes. For the record, I'm 27. It's not possible for me to have 76 homes for the most part. And that's where there was a lack of education within the community that essentially made it impossible for a general consumer to understand what's happening with short-term rentals. What you saw was all the incidents that did happen. And while they are rare, they do happen. But what you didn't see that night was we had 103 check-ins, and no one reported on all of our successful check-ins that night. And that makes it a very hard and skewed conversation when you were trying to advocate for short-term rentals. For the record, not much happens in them. They're not really that exciting on that side. People check in, check out. The lockbox is probably frozen right now. That's probably all that's happening. The guests are really, really good. So how do we navigate change? So essentially with the new regulations that are coming out to play, there's kind of key components. The occupancy tax, which is exactly like the hotels pay, it's going up to 4.2% or 4.25%. It's currently at 4% right now, so not much of a big difference. The consumer pays it at checkout anyways. Not a big change for us. The biggest change that's happening is that it needs to be owner occupied. So that means that the owner needs to currently reside in that unit, or a tenant can rent it off, a landlord with a lease, and put it back on Airbnb with the owner's permission. Now, when we talk about that, that's, like I already said, that's already in play. And I would not be surprised if there weren't a little bit of loopholes here and there that come out of that play. Here's one loophole that someone's already pointed out, and in fact, it was the counselors who already pointed out. You could assign a lease for 12 months to a tenant. Let's say they only need, or a student, they only need for 8 months. Then you get that tenant to go get their license, and you can rent it off for the 4 months that that tenant doesn't need it. There's a lot of loopholes that will come into play, and that's why we believe that if we were all at the table and come to fair regulation, it probably would be a safer market. And I think that's what all of us want, is a safer Airbnb experience for both guests, tenants, and landlords. So we decided to start OSTRA, and essentially it's the Ottawa Short-Term Rental Association. And with that, we want to advocate for short-term rental rights. So what we're working on right now with Gowlings is we do have an opinion piece through a retainer through them, and at which point we will be taking that for either bylaw infractions through an appeal or human right violations, essentially, are the two that we're exploring right now. Biggest difference is if a hotel can occupy in commercial zoning, we should be allowed to operate in commercial zoning as well. So if you're looking at anything in that commercial zoning, if you want to classify Airbnb or short-term rental as a hotel, we should be allowed to operate in commercial zoning. So you'll start to see appeals that keep coming, I would say, every year. Toronto's been in an appeal process since 2017. Right now, it's estimated that there's about 10,000 illegal Airbnbs in the city of Toronto. So that's why I would like to say with these regulations, it's not so much that the regulations weren't actually already in play, it's just they weren't implemented. So that's the side that we're interested of working with the city for coming up for those fair regulations. So if you're interested in OSTRA, we do have fundraising initiatives that are starting to get going, as well as grandfathering techniques coming in for Airbnbs that are already within the community, trying to grandfather them in. With OSTRA, you can go on Facebook and just send us a request, and we're happy to have you in that portfolio as well. So with change brings new opportunities, in my opinion. If you want to shut down the Airbnb, That's one conversation we can have. My assumption is that it's going to take most of 2020 to draft the bylaws, at which point there'll be public consultations that will come into play, and then at which point the appeal process could start, and we're prepared for that appeal process to go. That brought Toronto about 3 years through that appeal process, and I think it will probably be a similar track for Ottawa on that as well. But I think what change kind of does bring new opportunities. So that's why we did start another property management company, Flex Property Developments. It's essentially focused on long-term unfurnished and furnished stays. And this one's kind of a cool project we're working right now with insurance companies. So floods, fires, corporate partners, tech companies coming in, working with them for 30-day or more stays. The great part about a company staying as a tenant is they're really good guests, and that's something that we're really excited about with this project. Furnished stays, I think, are really a great opportunity within the real estate investment market to get that extra little lift out of your portfolio, and the other great thing is that you don't have furniture moving in and out. Do you have any questions about the short-term rental market? Yes?
Is there any sort of a time frame, any parameters like less than 30 days or up to 6 months, or are there any of those parameters being looked at?
So right now, a short-term rental classifies as 28 days or less, and essentially a tenant is 30 or 28 days or more. So we like to say that 20 days or less is a guest, 28 days or more is a tenant. So those bylaws would come in effect for